Gentlemen, today we're going over the HK91. Colton! You're zipped up pretty bad, man. I don't think you're gonna make it out of here. You know what to do. I'll see you on the other side, brother. Wish me luck. Are you familiar with the tale of Humpty Dumpty? How he fell off a great wall. How all the king's men and all the king's horses could not put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Well, when Humpty Dumpty came to, you know what he sought after? An HK91 to kill the king. I made all this up. But today we are talking about the HK91. Now this is an actual H&K weapon. This is going to be the civilian equivalent of the G3. Here's some brutal facts and honesty if we're being really transparent with ourselves. Has there been a plethora of HK PTR91 G3 content on the YouTubes? Sure there has. Absolutely there has. 110,000%. Have I done a video on an HK91 yet? Absolutely not. So I was pretty excited to because it's my channel, it's my rules. I can do whatever I want. So we're doing exactly that. Now, am I gonna give you anything groundbreaking in this video? Maybe, maybe not. Stick around and find out. But to me, it's pretty exciting. So let's dive into the HK91 on administrative results. Very fast history lesson. After World War II, the Germans are looking to rearm the Bundeswehr. They're shopping around and they come across the Belgian FAL. They like the Belgian FAL and they've been shopping around with some other 7.62 NATO caliber rifles. Apparently there was this thing that happened in World War II. The Germans got a little silly and they did a little blitzkrieging. Not a lot of Europe was down for that. They had a little bit of mixed feelings. They did not get them the FAL. You know, you guys have a long history of not being cool neighbors in the European sphere. We're not selling you no FALs. This sparks the necessity to come up with a battle rifle in-house. Now, some German designers that previously worked for the Third Reich were off in Spain making some cool guns, the Setme. Well, they come back to the fatherland and they start making some very cool guns, the H&K G3. Now, the H&K G3 would go on and have many different iterations, but essentially what spawned HK was FN not giving them a battle rifle, which I think is a fun little tidbit because now there's a whole little arms race in Europe between FN and HK, always chasing down contracts. So it's kind of fun history. It's kind of neat. If you're a firearms guy, you'll like that stuff. Of course, there's more to it, but that was the rundown from a guy who barely passed high school. So you're welcome for that. Now we get to the modern day HK G3. There's been a bunch of different variations of this gun, like I was saying, and there's the classic G3, there's the G3A1, or there's a G3A3, or the G3A4K. There's a bunch of different models, and typically it has to do with the style of furniture on the gun. This is gonna be a G3A3 if it was an actual G3. But this is a Seiko Import HK91. Story time. I walked into my LGS and I saw this bad boy on the wall. And I had been jonesing for an HK battle rifle. I know the PTR 91 exists, but I wanted that sweet, sweet Teutonic magic. And damn it, man, I was gonna get it. So I snagged the HK91 off the wall and I have yet to look back. Now I will say that the HK91 has massive aesthetic sex appeal. Buzzwords. The gun is beautiful. Looking at this thing, I'll just stare at it. I'll bring it out of my safe if I'm chilling at home. It'll just be chilling with me if I'm working on stuff in the office. I'm just looking at it, admiring its beautiful curves, its elegant angles, everything about it. It just speaks to me. The Teutonic magic, as what we like to call it here in the gun space, is in full force. Now, if you're totally unfamiliar with the weapons platform I'm holding, which I don't know how you would be considering just how much of a pop culture icon this weapon has become. It's just about in all the video games you've ever played involving firearms. It's in a slew of movies. One of the most popular ones that comes to mind, especially the HK91, Heat, baby. For me, the action is the juice.
Yeah, sure.
But the HK91 is specifically in that movie. I wonder if they couldn't get a specific G3, but they just managed to get an HK91. It's even in that movie in this very configuration. Chris uses it in the handoff scene, a deal that went wrong with Van Sant, marking his fate as a dead man. You know who's on the other side of this line? Who? A dead man. Something like that, right? Thanks, Robert De Niro. But he had this specific furniture with the bipod on, and he had no magnification, which is an interesting setup for an Overwatch guy. But to be fair, it looked like it was all within 100 yards, which is very capable of the iron sights on an HK91, which truly does speak to the quality of this weapon. It's almost like it's gotten a little too fast fire rate going for a second. Cold War is taking place, right? We have post-World War II world? We have a post-World War II society. We live in a society. After World War II, the emerging threat to the free world is, you guessed it, the Soviet Union. Communism is here, and communism wants to take away your blue jeans.
Yep, it's a mustache kind of morning, Chris. Jeans, jean shirt, and jean jacket.
Can't have that. So to defend the free world, we have battle rifles. Now, 7.62 NATO was gonna be the standardized cartridge that all of the NATO countries, go figure, we're gonna use. And then America comes in and says, hey, we just tried this thing out, 5.56. Guys, you gotta try this 5.56. And all the Europeans were like, God! Because they all switched over to 7.62 NATO, as opposed to the weird European cartridges they all probably would have wanted to have. So they were probably not having it after we were all telling them like, yeah, dude, bro, trust me, bro. 7.62 NATO's where it's at, bro. Of course, America gets into Vietnam, and they're like, hey, this shit's heavy. I'm not carrying this. I want my M16. Go figure. And of course, the rest of NATO goes to 5.56. Now, while that happened, there was a bunch of battle rifles being made. FALs, G3s, and they would essentially become a dominating tool in a lot of European countries. And what's cool about that is that they pretty much still are. In some countries, there's a lot of leftover G3s that those countries have. You know, think of like Sweden, I think Norway, I think Portugal, and then there's some other Middle Eastern countries that got licensing from HK to make their own variants of the G3. So it's a very prolific weapon. Now, as time would go on, the needs of the individual soldier on the ground would become more demanding, meaning that the HK G3, whatever platform they had, if they weren't using 5.56 guns, would have to keep up with the times. So there's a lot of modernization that would go into this platform. We, of course, have tried out a bunch of different setups out here, mainly using B&T furniture and a Knight's Armament rail to catch up to the modern times. Now, this particular weapon setup, you're noticing there's probably a weird theme going on, a lot of rails. So we have a Knight's Armament rail, and then we have a B&T rail up top. Yes, it weighs as much as you think it would. It's a very beefy gun. It's not for the faint of heart. Battle rifle is not for those that drink soy. It is those that enjoy raw milk. You have tallied your last hoe. To get this thing even close to the modern era, we had to attach a lot of pick rails. Now, to be fair, how I have it set up is definitely reminiscent of a certain time period during the Global War on Terror. Now, I saw a picture of a gentleman in the Global War on Terror. He was a British fellow, and he had his HK G3 set up in a particular fashion that just did it for me, man. I saw that and I was like, that is really cool. And that gentleman's name is Dave Radband. I managed to get in contact with Dave himself, which is a really cool thing about the internet. Sometimes the internet's just a horrible place. Other times it's really cool to connect with those that you have questions about. And he was kind enough to talk to me about his build and his time using his G3 when he was in Afghanistan. Guys in Afghanistan wanted more performance from their small arms. They had to reach out to further distances, and the 5.56 guns just weren't doing what they exactly wanted. So Dave was using that, and he said when he would use it for, either putting rounds down range at distance, it did great, or if he was clearing houses, he could dump a guy in one shot, and it did phenomenal. Go figure, it's a 7.62 30 cal round, right? So he had an ACOG, a D-ball, and then he had a funny setup with his Knight's rail where he had a Harris bipod and then a Surefire X300 underneath it. And you look at that compared to the more modern setups we have, and you're like, that's a very goofy setup, but apparently it just worked for Dave. So he was rocking and rolling with that while he was over there working with the Afghani partner forces. He talked very fondly of the G3 when he was using it, and so kind of in Dave's honor, and just because it also looked really cool, I set mine up that way, at least for part of this video. I wanted to do a more modern setup, as cool guy as we could get before we revert back to the old ways. Ooh. Now, while I have you, two things I want to talk about in this configuration are going to be the pistol grip and the stock. Now, there are aftermarket setups to get different pistol grips, and of course, you have a very wide variety of stocks that you can rock with this weapon. Now, I have a little, I would call it the meat tenderizer stock back here. It's both loved and hated. I love how it looks. I honestly, compared to a more conventional stock, don't love how it feels. A little suspect. But as far as making the gun a little bit more compact, it does an excellent job. Another thing is, gun is rather unforgiving, especially with the weight. I have this cheap canteen sling that I like to use on some of the more retro ARs. I threw it on real quick because I'll just use a quick hook style sling. Running it today, bent this thing. So I was like, oh, sick, dude. And I don't have a sling for the rest of today. Okay, so when I say the gun's unforgiving, it's unforgiving in that sense. You don't want to skimp out on stuff with this thing, especially, you know, how it just killed my ACOG while we're zeroing. Kind of shows that the gun's a very violent system in that aspect. Holy what's up? I think my ACOG is crazy shifted broken. Who's that? Gentlemen, do you truly want to LARP as a Bundeswehr? Americana Pipe Dream probably has something for you. Americana Pipe Dream, fantastic young Zoomers getting after it in the milsurp space and arena, and they have been sponsoring this channel for a bit now. If you haven't watched, or if you're just tuning in for the first time in a long time, hey, welcome back. But Americana Pipe Dream apparel, night vision, knives, manuals, night vision knives, they have a bunch of cool stuff. Milsurp clothing, you need it to drip out and attract a spouse. Now, I think a lot about the well-armed, well-prepared citizen. God, there's always a plane, dude. I'm trying to make a point. You're buzzing my spot, bro. Oh, I got a plane. I can fly. Look at me. I'm defying God by flying a plane. I don't belong up there. I'm a human. I belong on the ground. You may have one schizophrenic rant for today. Now, I think a lot about the well-armed, well-prepared citizen. Does the HK91 fit into your arsenal? Perhaps. I mean, the gun is very modular. It definitely has a track record, especially if it's an HK, of being extremely reliable. There's no doubt about that. There is a price hike to get into it. This gun was not cheap. You can, of course, get into the more affordable version of the PTR91, but you are losing some weird intrinsic magic that the Germans have when they make firearms. I've been seeing a lot of guys that run PTR91s and they don't seem to have many issues from what I can tell. I even had some issues feeding with this gun. Ooh. That did not sound good. Blows up like Kentucky Ballistics. But overall, I would say it's definitely a very reliable firearm. There is something very provoking.
It's provocative.
About a battle rifle in this configuration, especially just, you know, G3A3 style. A very stock gun. You have everything you need and nothing you don't. Probably the only thing you may want for going off the tactical cool guy crowd is a flashlight. But if it's a solar flare and it wipes out all the electronics, guess what? My HK91 slick like this still works. It's very much a boomer rant, but I don't care.
If you carry a gun with a light on it, when's the last time you needed that?
I have a very comfy ergonomic setup, and if I get tired of this setup, I pop some pins, I move some things around, and I have a whole new freaking setup. I can do what I want. I did not get myself the HK clip-on scope, which I'm kind of bummed about, but I would like to. I did want to give a shout out to an internet pen pal, 7.62 on Instagram. Now, I don't know this guy in real life. I've never met him. He's been a real G on the interwebs, being a great Instagram pen pal, and he helped me out a little bit with some HK questions relating to the HK91. I actually blame him for planting the mind virus of getting the HK91 bug inside of me. I would see him post his all the time, and I was like, dude, that's a very clean looking setup. I never had a real intrinsic interest in, you know, the G3. I always thought they were cool. I always thought they were a cool platform, but the PTR91 options of the market never really excited me. And then once you start going down the rabbit hole, you really uncover a whole new map of discovery. I think it has a lot of potential at the price point because the price hike to get into battle rifles is very expensive. Thankfully, with this platform, the most expensive part is the gun and the ammo. The mags are usually pretty cheap. The furniture is pretty expensive, which is kind of interesting. Even like the clubfoot meat tenderizer stock, other folding stock, rails, depending on what you get. Like the Knight's armament rail I got, it was pretty expensive, dude. It was like an arm and a leg for that rail, but that's a Knight's thing. So B&T mounts, you know, expensive stuff. So that price hike will increase rapidly. I mean, if you really wanted to like use this as a modern fighting rifle, you know, with night vision, passive aiming red dots on a bad route to go, that's an option. Man, this thing looks freaking sick. The iron sights. The HK iron sights have probably got to be some of my favorite iron sights, which is a pretty big claim considering the A2 and the C7 carry handle exists. I mean, the sights on this thing are phenomenal. Easily adjustable, pretty freaking good. It's really no complaints from me here. I was making easy, quick double taps or triple taps on paper while shooting this gun for the video. We used a variety of ammo. Used some M80 ball today, but for the majority of the shooting, we would use either a 150 grain or 168 grain AAC ammo I am a sponsor of the channel, so that would help out a lot. And it was fun just to try it out and see what we had going on. Now, mags for these have been historically pretty cheap. Pick them up anywhere from like $8, maybe on the more expensive end, maybe like 16 bucks. I was running a variety of like the waffle mags as well as like the set me mags. So when I got this, I was at the store and I was like, you know what, I'll just grab a bunch of their mags that they have just to have plenty of spare mags that I could use.
It's called a bullet clip that goes into the receiver.
Now, of course, we can't talk about the HK91 and not mention the operating system, the roller delayed blowback. Now, I want to give a big shout out to Henry of 9-Hole Reviews. In one of his videos, he does an excellent job breaking down the roller delayed mechanics.
The MP5 and the G3 are so dang reliable. And all of that comes down to this.
To some, it's confusing. To other guys, they just get it right off the rip. Now, the roller delay blowback system is a very good operating system. To me, it's just very pleasant to shoot, right? Especially when you're dealing with a 7.62 gun and all that energy. Of course, when it's scaled down to 5.56 or 9mm, it's like there's no recoil. The MP5 is just magical. It's a beautiful gun to shoot. Even in 7.62, the recoil is not bad. The recoil impulse is not bad whatsoever. The biggest hangup would probably be this trigger I got. I got an aftermarket triggers from the HK store, just trying some different things out. Even still, not a big fan. That's probably one of the biggest downsides. Now, with that trigger, I will say that if you're trying to do the flat range ninja LARPing, or trying to be fast and look cool for the gram, not gonna work in your favor. Go drill! Now, I think the gun would work great if there's a bunch of angry Soviets coming across Europe and you and your German buddies have to defend against that. Then I think the trigger is passable, right? Still a good military trigger. It gets the job done. Oof. Now, of course, the HK91 has one Giant Pitfall, but outside of all that, I think it's a fantastic battle rifle, all things considered. And what is that big pitfall, you may ask? Admin, what is it? It's the lack of a paddle. You guessed it. So the civilian equivalent of the G3, when they were importing these, lacked a paddle down here where the G3 would typically have it. You can still work around that. While shooting this, I found that if I was shooting, I could just break down my grip, get to the mag paddle button. Mag paddle button? What the f? HK, for whatever reason, it seems like when it comes to the American civilian gun owner, they just don't like you. They don't like me, they don't like you. HK just does not like civilian Americans owning guns. They give us the weirdest stuff. They don't give us their cool stuff. Even though we're the largest firearms consumers in the world, they can make a killing, but they just don't care. They don't care about us having cool guns. I want my civilian MP7. If I had like a semi-auto MP7, I'd probably hate it because it's not the cool full auto version, but I still want it, damn it. I still want it.
I have an MP7.
That being said, back in the day when they were importing these, no paddle. All you have is the mag release button. Very familiar, but it's kind of a far throw away from what we're used to on our AR-15s, how ergonomic it is on the AR-15. You can still get to it though. So when I would be shooting, I typically would just break down my shooting grip. I know it's kind of nerdy, but break down my shooting grip, come up and I can push the button and get the mag out and start the reload process. Now, to PTR's credit, they have paddles. And to PTR's credit, I think they make a very affordable battle rifle, especially one that mimics the quality of the Teutonic Magic. So this, of course, is not a video about the PTR91, but if we're talking about this subgenre, it's gonna come up and it's gonna be referenced. The gang tries HK reloads with no paddle. So one thing I'm looking to do is I'm probably going to add a paddle. I'm gonna send it off to a gunsmith and have that paddle added because I am too dumb of a monkey to do it myself. I will say that I will not have a full in-depth experience with an HK91, unlike the guys like, say, Dave, that had to stake his life on this kind of weapons platform when he was over in the Middle East, right? So there is always that little missing X factor, but we can still try and live with it to the best of our capacity. I know it's a weird kind of phrase, but you really do learn a weapon system in and out when you get to do that, and you get to learn its limitations. Now, another downside with battle rifles, I've been chasing the battle rifle bug a lot, guys. Recently, I've been really chasing it, working on a Scar 17 video, have a bunch of other battle rifles for another video, and this is gonna be one of them in there, but I of course believe this deserves its own video because I've fallen in love. We're gonna run off together. But the thing with battle rifles is trying to build a loadout how you would with 5.56, everything just becomes very heavy. Everything becomes either a little bit slowed down. Now, I'm not saying you can't run this gun fast. Absolutely, you can cook with this gun. But when you start stacking on all that gear, all that equipment, things start to slow down just a little bit. I mean, this is a pretty long Haas, not crazy long, not like a musket, but it's definitely a military service rifle length. So a little bit of a tangent, but it's stuff I think about, and I'm sure it's stuff you think about too. Story time. In doing research for this gun, I came across this old video, and it was made by a boomer. And it was one of the most interesting pieces of gun YouTube material that I have ever found. Mainly the thought process that went into it. And what I'm talking about is that this boomer essentially made this video, and I know he was a boomer, he made this video going over, I think it was like the bipod catch on the handguard. And while in the video, he would sporadically play images of girls in bikinis. It was the most interesting tactic I've seen in a YouTube video in a long time. I could not get it out of my mind. Like, what was this guy thinking? What was going on in his head when he was making this video? Like, yeah, the boys are gonna love this HK91. You know what else they're gonna love? Chicks in bikinis. Well, he's not wrong, right? I don't know what red-blooded American doesn't see a scantily clad woman and feel something. You shouldn't. Jesus is watching. But I understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, I just was trying to wrap my head around it, and I thought, dude, this guy could have been one of the greats if he really leaned into it. With his tactics, with his on-camera personality charm, he would have crushed it. He would have absolutely crushed it. And by now, Colton should be playing the video so you know what I'm talking about, but it was a real treat to have come across, like, it was like, I felt like an archaeologist on the internet coming across an ancient lost piece of art. I have no idea where that dude's at now. You know, Big Hoss may be gone, Big Hoss may have moved on. I don't know, but I hope he's out in life crushing it. I had to tell you guys a story because when I saw that video in reference to the HK91, it consumed me. It consumed my thoughts. Now, what is the practicality of this weapon system when it comes to the well-armed American citizen? This is kind of my main angle when I think about firearms. There's two real roles that battle rifles offer the individual. There's the assaulter role, and then there's the DMR role. Technically speaking, with a full-length gun like this, you could get away with both, depending on how you set it up. So it offers you two options. You either go the DMR route, which is gonna be even more money if you get a good optic that can hold up 308 recoil, or you get the red dot setup and you have a very aggro assaulting weapon throwing a lot of lead from your barrel. I think that is the interesting question there. The HK option, of course, I've harped on enough, it's gonna cost you more. The PTR91 option will be more affordable, lacks Teutonic magic. Ultimately, gentlemen, I think the HK91 is a very cool weapon. I have fallen in love with it, and this is a big thing to say because I have FAL. I love FAL. I don't have Belgian FN FAL, I have the DSA build, which is nice, but it's just not the same. But having an HK91, I think, is a really cool piece of my collection. I want to show it off to you guys, kind of share my thoughts, a little bit of what went into shooting it, a little bit of the practicality, rapid history fire, because it's been covered to death by this point. But I still think it's a really cool gun, and of course, I'm gonna do what I do best, make a dang YouTube video about it. Well, gentlemen, that wraps up the video. I have nothing else for you. Two things in life are guaranteed, death and taxes. I will catch you on the flip.